our podcast all about theater, from the playhouse to the players, from the page to the stage, all about theater in Detroit and around the country. Welcome. This evening, we're going to have a good discussion with John Sloan III, who is the founding producer and artistic director of the Obsidian Theater Festival, and also the CEO of Ghostlight Creative Production, and the executive director of Ghostlight Art Initiative. Has three big hats that he fills, and we want to get into what he does and how he does it, especially considering that theater and the arts itself are an expression of life. Life imitates art, art imitates life. And the theater is the expression you get on the stage, from the page, that expresses various aspects of life. What we have interesting today is a lot of this work that Mr. Sloan is doing is directly interactive with the community. So we want to get into, first of all, who he is and his experiences in theater, and to enlighten us today, the community, on just what these organizations are about and what they're doing for the community and for the theater arts in general. So welcome, Mr. Sloan, to Curtain Call.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about who you are, your experiences, your training, your expertise.
Sure.
We don't want to know everything, but as it pertains to theater, just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I can get away with telling you everything. But no, my name is John Sloan III. I grew up in Oak Park, 8 Mile Greenfield. I went to the University of Michigan for musical theater. And then after school, I moved to New York in 2005. And I moved back home almost exactly 7 years ago, so end of August of 2017.
Okay.
And so, I grew up in the area. I have always, when I was living in New York, when I was on tour, a little bit of time in LA, I always knew that I would end up coming back. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that I can be here now and can be a part of the arts community here in Detroit.
Okay. Yeah. That you mentioned the arts community here in Detroit and your experiences in New York. So many young playwrights, so many young artists, so many musicians included, look to New York as like the Mecca. If I can get to New York and make it, I've made it.
Right.
A lot of times people grow up wanting to go, as opposed to exploring and experiencing or even helping develop theater here in Detroit. Tell us about the differences. What was it like in New York as opposed to being here, and how does those differences fuel or inspire or affect what you're doing in theater here?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I answer that question, I'd also love to say I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be able to stay home. And I know a lot of artists who made that decision or have made the decision like I have to come back. The difficulty is in the amount of work that exists, right? And so I think there's too much of a New York bias. I think people presume that just because you did a show in New York that you must be amazing. I know a lot of shows that happen in New York that are not amazing. But I think that comes down to the capacity, right, of a certain market to have infrastructure to support full-time artists. For me, when I moved to the city, I moved to New York, I was 21, 22, completely naive, a bit of an idiot, you know what I mean? About just what life, I was 22.
Comes with the age.
Yeah. And I didn't know necessarily what life was going to present and put out in front of me. And it was hard. It was real hard to make ends meet and to work. And struggled a lot. I worked at Banana Republic. I worked at Starbucks. I was catering. I was picking up just kind of like whatever jobs, you know what I mean, I could get. I was on a street team for a kid's daycare. I would have to walk outside and hand out balloons. Okay. It was weird. I had to go to playgrounds and hand out balloons to like kids with their nannies, and I don't think they were thinking it through, because like when I was just like walking around, this random guy walking around a playground handing out balloons to kids was a little suspect. So that wasn't the best job. But you do everything that you can. What I will say about New York that is extremely valuable as a theater community is that there are so many people there, and there are so many artists trying to make it work that you end up in random gigs without even trying, right? And so that was a great experience for me, because I got to really just kind of cut my teeth. And I went from being, one of the most talented people in the room to just being a random person, just one other person, because everybody was talented and everybody was working.
Right.
And that's how I started. That's how I joined Actors Equity, which is a professional union for stage actors. And that's how I started working and gigging on a more consistent basis. And that's different from here, if only because we don't have as many opportunities for work. There aren't as many companies that are producing on a consistent basis. There aren't as many producers or directors that really demand that type of consistent professionalism. And so what'll happen is, like when I was living in New York, I would have maybe 2, 3, 4, sometimes auditions a day. But it was really heavy audition season, which means you could easily do 5 to 10 auditions in a week, right? If you're really hustling and you're really going after it, right? That would be at the high end, but you could do 1 audition a day easy on average. In this community, if you're looking at theater in specific, you're only going to do maybe 5, 6 auditions a year, because each theater, Flint Rep is going to have their own audition, right? Their own call for their own season. Detroit Public Theater, Plowshares, Detroit Rep, they're going to do their own calls for their own seasons. So maybe you could call back later on, but if you think about the fact that you would say, let's say in a hypothetical, you get 1% better, just 1% better every time you do an audition, because you're walking into the room and you're trying out new stuff, and you're working on new songs, you're doing another monologue, and you're just the practice of getting up and doing work inherently makes you a better artist, right? So if you're doing 5 auditions a day, then you get to the end of a week, or 5 auditions in a week, you get to the end of that week and you're 5% better. Right? If you're doing 5 auditions in a year, then you only get the opportunity to grow that 5% every year. Right.
Yeah, especially if you're not getting the jobs.
Especially if you're not getting jobs. Absolutely. Right. And so like there's that lack of opportunity. I've said plenty of times in coming home that Detroit doesn't lack for talent.
No, not at all.
What we do lack for is the infrastructure necessary to give talented individuals the opportunities to hone their talents into skill sets. And so the more we can present opportunities, the more that we will see local artists be able to grow and have the exact same careers that artists can have in New York or Chicago or anywhere else.
Okay, so you came back home in 2017. Was that a purposeful move? Was it lack of whatever was happening in New York?
Yeah, it was a purposeful move. So I was on tour and we got our closing notice for that show. And the producers had said, we're going to do another tour, so let us know if you want your name in the hat for that project. I was 32 at the time.
Okay, so you'd been about 10 years.
I'd done about 10 years on that show. Maybe it was 33. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do. I had torn my left calf, in 15. I had torn my ACL, my meniscus, in 15, 16. So I had a year of 2 knee surgeries and a year of PT. I had cortisone shots in my left shoulder, both elbows, and my back. And I had steroid injections into my vocal cords twice.
Okay, so the obvious question here is, what show were you doing? that was as strenuous and dangerous as football.
Yeah, right. Maybe not football. Maybe basketball, tennis. Okay. You know what I mean? I spent a good chunk of my career on tour with the First National of The Lion King.
Okay.
And if everybody's seen The Lion King when it was at the Opera House, as an example, it's a pretty physical show. There are puppets, and you're up and down on set pieces, and you're moving things, and you're running around. And so I injured myself a few times on that gig. And then the rest of it is just the wear and tear that happens when you're performing on a regular basis.
Right.
So you do 8 shows a week, 52 weeks a year,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Tuesday through Friday evening, a double show Saturday, a double show Sunday. You get Monday off. You get Tuesday afternoons off mostly, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'll also be in rehearsals. So at least one of those days feels like a double show day anyway, right?
Okay.
And so I knew that show was going to close. We had gotten our closing notice. I knew it was going to close, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do, right, for the rest of my career. When I was rehabbing my knee injury, I did the surgery in Ann Arbor, and I did the rehab here at home. And I just noticed how much had changed. By that point, like, my parents moved out. We were in the suburbs. And just driving around the city, I was like, this is not, I don't recognize places, landmarks or buildings that used to exist either didn't exist or are completely different. And the neighborhood was also changing, right? So what is, like, redevelopment is great, because redevelopment means that you're getting new money, energy, resources into an area that had previously been ignored and neglected, right? Gentrification is something else, right? Because that's people being displaced,
right?
And so what I was seeing was some redevelopment that I thought was really dope, and then some gentrification and some displacement of peoples that I didn't like at all. I've always felt like the arts is an amazing way to communicate.
Absolutely.
And it's an amazing way to have difficult conversations. And you can trick somebody into having a real hard conversation by giving them a piece of comedy. You know what I'm saying? And everybody's laughing about something, and they're driving home and be like, oh, wait, damn, I think I was actually talking about, you know. And so I wanted to figure out how I could be a part of that here. At the same time, there was some family stuff. My grandmother was sick. I wanted to come home and support and figure out how I could make that work. I was talking to a young woman and wanted to see if I could make that work. I was not able to do that, but that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay.
It's working out, right?
It's working out, right? I met my fiance after that, so that was great. And so it was a combination of family reasons. My body's like, you know, going through those injuries in your 20s versus your 30s is a different thing. And now I'm in my 40s, and it's another different thing, right? And so all those things were kind of playing into it. And also just me recognizing the opportunity to come home at that time, I think was really important. Because what we've seen over the past 7 years in the city and the growth that we've seen has not always been equitable. Like, where money and resources have been poured into hasn't always, and I would say more often than not, is not equitable and isn't balanced. And so part of what I really want to make sure we do with our work is make sure that we are not just like talking at community, but working in collaboration with. And making sure that folks, if they want to come downtown to see a show, we do that too. We produce work downtown, that's great. And also, if you can't get downtown, then you can stream the stuff online, or we will come to you into community and we'll have that conversation and we'll produce that work together.
Okay. I've said on this show a number of times that working in theater, working on the stage, is as mentally and physically demanding as any other profession or career. And we just got proof of that. I've never heard anybody having that many surgeries from performing in a play, but like I said, it's a lot of work. So moving here and recognizing the opportunities here for theater, what was your first move? Because I'm curious, you've got these 3 different organizations here. What was first? What was second? What was third? And you mentioned how it's connected to the community. You talked about gentrification. We talked earlier about a play that was about gentrification. So I want you to get into all of that.
Sure.
But give us a timeline, a step by step. Because I've been doing theater here for 40 years. And it's always been a process.
Sure.
And a lot of setbacks, a lot of progress as well.
Right.
The number one roadblock or hurdle, funding.
Yes.
And money. So give us a step by step of how you developed these different entities in theater to this point.
Sure. So in the order of which they came, I actually need to back up a little bit. and go back to 2008.
Oh, just a minute. Let me do a space and ID.
Sure.
You're watching Wjzz Cool TV Curtain Call live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, and other social media platforms. Please like us, follow us, share, comment, subscribe, and if you'd like to call in, you can reach us at 313-355-6018 if you've got questions for Mr. Sloan or myself as we talk about theater. Being in the Detroit community, we hope that you will call in today because we've got some very interesting things going on in the city of Detroit in theater with Mr. Sloan. So now.
Yeah, so back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, when I was on tour with Lion King, I started working with our professional union, Actors Equity, has a foundation. That foundation is called Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS.
Okay.
And so Equity Fights AIDS was founded in the 80s as the theater community's response to the AIDS epidemic.
Okay.
And since then, it had started to grow and address a large array of concerns, right? So it also addressed poverty and other general health concerns, natural disaster relief, stuff like that. So when I was on tour, I started supporting in the production of some of those benefits. So we would be in pick a city, Los Angeles, and we would do a benefit concert for Equity Fights AIDS in collaboration with a local nonprofit, right?
Okay.
So that's how I started producing and directing when I was on tour. As I was traveling, I noticed that as amazing as Broadway Cares is as an organization, it doesn't deal with all of the same issues that I think I wanted to make sure that were dealt with, right?
Okay.
And it didn't always directly address the Black community as we were traveling. And because we're with Lion King, we're with a cast that's 90% Black or people of color. And so I started an organization on the tour called the Helping Hands Campaign for the Arts.
Okay.
And what Helping Hands did is we would go into whatever city we were in, we would do a similar cabaret or benefit concert, but we pair that with an outreach event.
Okay.
So we were in New Orleans 2 years after Katrina. And so we got some folks from the cast together. We worked with the United Way, and we went and we did a home rebuild. And we helped this brother get his house back up to, together and painted the house and helped fix it up under supervision, of course. And then that next week, so that was on one Monday, and then the week after that was when we did the concert. The benefit of us doing it that way is the local news would come out to cover the cast of The Lion King is with the United Way, X, Y, and Z. And that made sure that that local organization, that nonprofit, got some additional spotlight, they got some fundraising,
Okay.
So Helping Hands existed from 2012 through 2015 when I was on tour.
Okay.
And then when I came home, I was trying to figure out what the next iteration of it was going to be. Before we closed down Helping Hands, we were running outreach events for Lion King, Jersey Boys, and Wicked. So those are three big national tours, right, that are going around the country, that are doing outreach events, and that are, whether it's working with the USO, going to the Ronald McDonald House, singing for kids, like working with houses, shelters, and food pantries. We covered a wide array of outreach opportunities, and always doing it with this eye towards what the arts can do in support of community endeavors and events, right? Offering that helping hand.
Okay.
So when I moved home, I knew that I wanted to continue that work. I wasn't exactly sure how to do that. At the time, when I got back home, I was also involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. So the Detroit chapter of BLM, and really thinking consciously about what that looks like. I should also say that my namesake, my grandfather, was a Tuskegee Airman.
Okay.
And so I grew up with this
significant history.
Yes, that is probably one of the most important aspects of my biography, right?
Okay.
And so I grew up with this knowledge and understanding and constant conversation about what it looks like to be active. Like, what does it look like to be an engaged member of your community, of your neighborhood? And that doesn't have to be service. It can be that. That doesn't have to be the church. It can be that. But like, what does it mean? You need to do something was the message, right? Like, there has to be a way for you to be involved and for you to be engaged. And so for me, that always came through theater. It always came through the arts and through music. And so coming back home, that was something I wanted to make sure was plugged in. So Helping Hands, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with it. I started the for-profit company, Ghostlight Creative, and Ghostlight was doing event production work. So for 3 years...
Explain that. When
Yeah.
you say event production work.
Absolutely. So a great example is Fiat Chrysler before they became Stellantis. They wanted to do some Black History Month events.
Okay.
And everybody knows that like Ford and GM have these big February galas. And so Fiat Chrysler wanted to do one. And so for 3 years, I produced their Black History Month gala.
Okay.
And so what that would mean is I would come in with a team. We would go to, we'd look at the venues, we'd build the stage, we'd, hire the artists, we'd curate that show for them.
Okay.
And we would do other events like that. We did some docu-style film work, documentary shorts for organizations like the Detroit Justice Center, who is an amazing community law office. And so that's the type of work that we were doing, right? A lot of some documentary film work. We had a documentary called Take Me Home, which was about the tax foreclosure housing crisis in Detroit. And that went to the Freak Film Festival, Black Star, NOLA Film Festivals. And so that's the kind of work that we were doing. And then COVID happens.
Right.
And
shuts down the world.
And shuts down
the world.
Everything. Right? So I'd always said, I remember I was on tour in my mid-20s, and a good friend of mine who was older than me, he was in his 40s, he blows out his calf. And his career was over, because by that point he's 43, 44, and an injury like that as a dancer is really hard to come back from. And he didn't really have a backup plan. Like, he knew at some point his dance career was going to end, but he hadn't put a lot of things in place. And so now this man, I'm not going to say his name on air, has this big injury and has a family and a mortgage, and he's trying to figure out how to make this thing work, right? So I'd always told myself that I was never going to be without a backup plan. And so I have directed, I've produced, I've been an actor, a singer, a musician, a lighting designer, a stage manager, like you name it in this industry, I've done it, right? And so I thought I was going to be insulated from any kind of career up and downs, because I would always be able to find a job doing something. Never anticipated COVID. Right? So COVID hits, and I lose, in the beginning of 20, I lose all my work for the rest of 20 and 21. So I'm sitting there now like, I don't even know what, you know what I mean? I was spending through, because I've been home for a couple of years at that point, so I was spending down all my savings. I was cashing out all my stocks. You know what I mean? My folks thankfully helped me out where I needed it. But I was stuck. And not really sure what to do, because, as I'm sure you remember, being a performing artist especially was hard.
Exactly.
Right? Because like musicians, depending upon the type of music, you could go in a studio somewhere and still kind of create some work. Film producers could still kind of produce. But for theater and live performance artists, like what were we going to do, right? So this is also the summer, as everybody remembers. So spring was really hard. And getting through that, I was burning through savings and trying to figure life out.
Not knowing that it was going to last as long as it did.
Having no idea. Yeah. And that's, I think, something that people forget, right? I remember like mid-March, I want to say it was March like 15th or something, when everything started getting shut down.
March 15th, exactly.
Exactly. My girl and I moved in together, thinking it was going to be like a nice little staycation, give us a couple weeks to kind of test something out. We moved in together, and then we're getting married in a month. Like, that's how. So that was one thing, I guess, that came out well from that situation, for me at least. And so we moved in together, and just kind of like, okay, cool. The first couple weeks, everybody's kind of at home. We're day drinking. We're having a good time. It's no big deal. And then a month. And then 2 months, and then 3 months, and then all my clients are going away, right? All the contracts are getting torn up and like ripped up, people asking for deposits back, all that stuff is happening. And then we get to June, and now George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, right? And so now we're seeing all these uprisings and protest marches that are happening. And I lived in Corktown at the time, so all up and down Michigan Avenue and going downtown. And at the same time, as my art is like, and the work is falling apart, I'm also one of the lead organizers for Black Lives Matter, and so that's even busier. So on one side, I'm losing contracts. On the other side, there are like marches in the streets, and like you've got milk and magnesia with you, and just in case there's tear gas, and like all these things are happening at one time. And the cognitive dissonance was loud. Like, it was really hard for me to reconcile both of these huge things happening at this exact same moment. And at any other time that I would have been going through
And I don't know
something.
if people didn't consider what you just said.
Yeah.
These two huge things happening at the same time.
Right? Like in any other year, one of those things
Would have been major.
would have been it. That would have been the thing that everybody would have been talking about.
Right.
I remember when I was on tour when Mike Brown died. I was in Montreal, I was in Canada, and which was an interesting experience because Canadians have they like to pretend that they're not racist and don't have any issues, even though they do.
I know they do.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, that was an interesting experience, and like the cast got together and we did like a little social media video, and Eric Garner, like the hands up, don't shoot, that pictures everybody was doing. And so all of the work that we had been doing as artists, we have been able to be activists, right? We had been able to kind of live in the tradition of Nina Simone and Harry Belafonte because we would be in DC when something would happen, and so we could go and we could do a cabaret and we could, now I'm at home and this is happening and I can't do anything. I can't speak out. I can't do a show. Like I'm struggling trying to figure this out. At the same time, a great friend of mine and partner and mentor in a lot of ways, Rochelle Riley, reached out to me. She runs the
Economist.
the journalist. She's also the city's the head of the city's department for arts and culture and entertainment. And she said, I have this guy that I met and I want to facilitate an introduction. He's looking at getting into theater and doesn't know necessarily how to tap in all the ways. I feel like you guys would be great to have a conversation. And so that led to a conversation between myself and this gentleman named David Carroll. And David was just starting a theater company in West Bloomfield called Nicely Theater Group. And he said he was looking for a way to be involved in theater in Detroit and to also do it in a way that uplifted a lot of the issues that we were dealing with at the time, right? So he and I started talking, and what came from those conversations over the course of, I would say maybe 4 or 5 conversations over the course of 8 weeks-ish, was the Obsidian Theater Festival.
Okay.
And so OTF, we just are wrapping up our 4th season. Is a project that really kind of came out of my head, and then David and I talked about, and he wanted to support and get involved with, and we grew together.
Okay.
And the goal is to create a sustainable platform for emerging Black voices in theater and film. It's really hard to get new work produced. Like, it's really hard. I don't care who you are, what you look like, how you identify, getting a new, whether it's theater, film,
exactly.
whatever it is, right?
Right.
Because the market economics are tough. It's a long, I'm gonna get like a little nerdy for a second, but it's a really long runway before you can get any sort of return on your investment.
I've heard.
Right. And so,
especially in the film industry.
Especially in film, right? So let's say you produce, let's take like an Avengers movie where it takes $100 million to make that film. Okay, it's $100 million they have to raise, and then they have to cast it, they have to shoot it, they have to go into post-production. So it's anywhere from like 2 to 7 years before they release that movie, right? Which means they've spent their $100 million. That's gone.
Right.
They're not gonna see that, right? That movie comes out. This is the thing about film. That movie comes out, and it opens up in theaters all across the country, all across the world. And if it's a hit, they can make that money back and then some in the first month. Let's say you spend $1 million producing a new play. And this is going to go to Broadway and it's going to be amazing. First of all, $1 million is really low to get a new show to Broadway, right?
Right.
But let's say that's what you're doing. And when that show comes out, you need to develop the show and write the show and get that show up. So maybe from the time you raise and invest $1 million to the time that show opens, it's less than for a film. Maybe it's 3 years, right? That show opens and it goes up. But when it opens in one theater, in one city, one show per night, right? For maybe 800 people. So there's no way you can make back that money that quickly.
Right.
And so what we want to do with Obsidian, what we have been doing with Obsidian, is we've been giving new writers, emerging writers, an opportunity to have their work produced much more quickly.
Okay.
So every year we do a call for submissions. We get around 1 to 150 submissions a year, and we go through and we comb that down, and we produce 4 plays,
Okay.
1 musical, and 1 cabaret.
Okay, I was going to ask if you did music.
Yep.
Yeah.
We do 4 plays, a musical, and a cabaret,
Okay.
and we do that every year, and we hold the financial lift. And so you submit your work
And
to
I need
us.
to give you some of my scripts. All my scripts are musical dramas.
Do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Musicals, but they are plays with music.
We love it. We love it.
Yeah.
And so we hold that financial lift, right? So that means we're paying the writer a licensing fee to produce their work.
Okay.
We're hiring directors, stage managers, scenic designers, wardrobe designers. We're giving them budgets so they can get their work produced. We're casting the shows. We're paying the actors. We're renting the venues. And then because what do we know about the city in a lot of ways? The accessibility is a major thing that we need to make sure we're thinking about, right? And that's accessibility across economic lines and how much it costs to go see a show at the Opera House or the Fisher. And then also just around the lack of public transportation, right?
Right.
And so we film and stream all of our content online. So if folks want to, they can go to obsidianfest.org. That's Obsidian, OBSIDIANFEST.org. And they can stream all of our shows from our previous 3 seasons.
Okay.
Free of charge.
You hear that? ObsidianFest.com.
Right, obsidianfest.org.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
ObsidianFest.org.
Yeah, and they can stream everything from all 3 of our seasons. The other part of that that's really important to remember is that we always have a free option.
Okay.
I do not believe you can dream to be something you haven't seen. And so it's really important to us to make sure that artists of all ages have the ability to see the work, to take part in the work without having to worry about cost being a barrier. If you want to give us money, we will take it, I promise. But what's really important is to make sure that, a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old or an 80-year-old has the opportunity to enjoy this work without having to be concerned about, coming out $300 to go to see the show.
Right.
Yeah.
You're watching Wjzz Cool TV Curtain Call, our live podcast about theater, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, X, and other top social media platforms. Please like us, follow us, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. Okay, so you've talked about Ghost Light Creative Productions.
Yep.
That's the one where you
That's the for-profit company.
for-profit
Yeah.
company, and you've talked about now Obsidian Theater Festival,
Right.
which I had a couple of people on that were
Yeah.
involved in that this summer, and I'm definitely going to try to be, if not being a part of it next summer, at least checking it out.
Yeah, come on.
And again, tell us again where we can, so people can write this down, where they can see this work, because I think it's important to expose our community to live theater.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got certain aspects. Like when I came up, live theater in the black community was pretty much non-existent unless it was in school on college campuses.
Yeah. It's funny because
At
Detroit,
least in where I grew up in the South.
yeah, in Detroit at one point there were more black theater companies in Detroit, Michigan than there were anywhere else in the world.
Right. We talked about Ron Milne, and we talked
Yeah,
about
absolutely. Concept East,
right?
Yes. Woody King, like all that work, right?
Right.
And as there are economic downturns affect the arts in this country, I think first before almost anything else, because unlike being in other countries across the world, the arts are not subsidized. The government does a really horrible job at valuing the arts in the U.S., right? And so we have to do that work ourselves. And so if folks want to answer your question, they can just go to Google or Bing, whatever they use, and search for the Obsidian Theater Festival. They can search Detroit Black Theater Festival, Detroit Black Theater Detroit, Black Festival Theater Detroit, like whatever combination of those words, Obsidian, they can put in and we'll pop up.
Okay.
What I will also say is, if you remember as I was talking to you earlier, I had this organization, the Helping Hands campaign, that I've been really trying to figure out a purpose for since I had come back.
Okay.
And Ghostlight is our for-profit company. We were taking other clients, trying to rebound after the pandemic and doing work. And the festival was growing. But what we needed, and what we now have, was a container for that programming. Because what's really important as I think about this work and try to grow this work is making sure that we are partnering with the city and with the community. When I say the city in this context, I don't mean like the mayor and the city council. I mean like folks, regular everyday people that live in the city, right? To present work and programming opportunities that are going to be of benefit and going to be of value. And so in 2021, the Helping Hands campaign for the arts transitioned and became the Ghostlight Arts Initiative.
Okay.
And the goal of the Ghostlight Arts Initiative is to use the performing arts, media arts, and every artistic modality possible towards a social justice end and social progress.
Okay.
And so how do we do that? We do that through the Obsidian Theater Festival, right? Which is a project that lets us produce work that addresses specific social issues. We also do that through specific funding and programming. And so this year we're launching 3 amazing new programs. We're launching a Young Artist Workshop, which is specializing in presenting young artists in specific. And so these are high school age folks with an opportunity to understand playwriting and how they can become better playwrights, right? We're also launching neighborhood engagement programming. And so we went down to Live 6, which is an amazing organization off 6 Mile in Livernois, Nick Nichols for some of y'all, that allows us the opportunity to present work in that community. So we did this installation, and it was an installation of still and moving images, a retrospective of work that we have produced, along with quotes from different artists, some content, some video that was streaming on a loop. And we're going to continue building in that community, in that Fitzgerald, Bagley, University District neighborhood, and continuing offering opportunities. And then we also have a Detroit Artist Fellowship Program. The fellowship program I'm really excited about because our goal is to have 4 to 5 fellows by the end of next year. And those fellows will all have the opportunity to participate in one of the following areas: in theater management, production, film production, marketing and communications, and arts education. And for their participation, they will receive a $10,000 yearly stipend paid out monthly. They will also receive different professional development opportunities. So they'll all get to take classes like on how do you brand yourself and an idea. Are you building a budget, right? And what does it mean to have like organizational financial efficacy? And the goal is that they can continue to take part in that program, start with us in that first year, and continue to come back over the next 2 years and get to the point where we can help place them in jobs and careers in that industry if that's what they want to do. And so the initiative, I would like for us to think about the Ghostlight Arts Initiative as the nonprofit umbrella, as the organization that helps to develop programming that is always thinking about the arts as activism or the arts as education, right? And what programming comes from that. And the Obsidian Theater Festival is an example of how we can grow that type of programming for the community.
Okay, great. That's truly wonderful. So it sounds like you've got a major team of professionals working with you in order to pull off all these different areas, especially those that you just mentioned, in terms of getting people marketing experience, production experience, directing experience, playwriting experience. Can you talk about your team?
Yeah, it's not just me, I promise you. If it was just me, I'd be crazy. I'd be in the ground, right? So we have a wonderful team. By the end of this calendar year, we will have had more than 125 folks on payroll.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's because we have a lot of big projects and a lot of projects that are really important, but also because we have a commitment, I will say, about that 125. Of that number, 80% identify as being BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color. 90% are based right here in Metro Detroit. And that includes an executive staff led by 7 amazing Black women. And so those are numbers that I'm really proud of, because what's important from my perspective as a leader is in making sure that we are centering and uplifting the most marginalized identities and individuals.
Okay.
And that folks that live at those intersections have the opportunities to grow, to be paid a fair and equitable wage for their work, and to grow a career and their knowledge base, and an opportunity to present work without censorship. Right, which is something that's really important, because we are not a PWI, predominantly white institution. We don't put any guardrails really around the work that gets produced. The only thing is that it has to be good. Like, don't come to me with some
junk, right?
Yeah, don't do that.
Right.
That's not going to get up on the stage. But if it's good work, I don't have to necessarily agree with it, because I'm not going to agree with everything. You're not going to agree with everything. You know what I'm saying? And what is really valuable is being able to have difficult conversations, being able to use the theater, being able to use film to have those conversations where we might disagree, and doing that in a way that is really strong. So we have an amazing team of folks across all those departments that also help us think about what it means to have conversations. And so one thing that's that I'm really proud of is that as part of the Ghostlight Arts Initiative, we have an arts education team who looks at all of the work that we produce across the season, and they pull out the relevant themes. So maybe one theme is gentrification, right? Maybe another show talks about trans rights. Maybe another show talks about poverty, right? Maybe another show talks about toxic masculinity. And they pull out all those themes and they present a companion guide that goes along with all of our work that says, here are the big themes that we want you to think about. Here is how you can think about them and reframe them. And just in case you thought we were pulling this stuff out of nowhere, here is a QR code with links to resources that you can read yourself, that you can use to better understand the work that you've just seen that's being produced.
Wow.
It's really fantastic. Dr. Rashida Harrison is our Director of Education and Professional Development. She's a professor right now at Michigan State University. And she is the one that helps us spearhead that. Saray Daniels, Sarah McCants, those are other really important women that are part of that side of the organization. And they're really working focused on that work. I'll also say this year we launched the first annual Detroit Impact Arts Conference. And so Impact took place at Wayne State's campus June 24th.
That Monday, right?
Yeah, that was that Monday. That was the 24th to the 26th. And we had some amazing artists that came. And so all the programming that I talked about, the Young Artist Workshop, the neighborhood programming, all of that stuff launched at Impact. And so that was our big kickoff for our year-long programming. We had an amazing playwright, Detroiter, Tony nominee, MacArthur Genius Grant winner, Dominique Morso, and she was our keynote speaker to kick off that. And then the Festival Obsidian took place the 27th through the 30th. And so it was one big week, right? Like one big week of Black theater arts events in the city.
Right. Then I heard all about it from you. And the couple of people I had on the show. And I definitely plan to be a part of it.
Come on through, man. Can't wait to see you.
And I am definitely going to submit some work.
Please.
To see how that flies. We talked about the connectivity with the social issues, the things you just mentioned, marginalized people, and how theater has been is a medium by which these things can be discussed and understood and exposed to give all sides of the issue. And you just given us a wonderful idea of all the things that you're doing. What specifically can we look for in the coming months or two that's coming up?
So from a programming standpoint, we're going to have another series of programs that launch in that Live 6 neighborhood. So Fitzgerald, Bagley, University District, in collaboration with Live 6. And we're working, fingers crossed. I don't know if I can announce this, but we're hoping to have a strong collaboration with the University of Detroit Mercy. So hoping that work can continue. And so folks can go and check that out. Still currently now with Live 6. If they have any questions about the programming, whether it's the fellowship program, any of our courses, because we also have like a lot of online courses in acting and theater and dance, they can just go to ghostlight.art. So ghostlight.art. And then coming up, because we are right now, I was just before I came over here in a meeting for our post-production team for the festival. So because we
Okay.
film and stream everything, it's a 6-camera shoot. It's a big crew. So our editors are in there right now, just working to get everything taken care of. And all of that content is going to start streaming this fall.
Okay.
So what folks can do right now is they could go back to obsidianfest.org and they could sign up for one of our streaming plans.
Okay.
And our streaming plan, there's a free plan that starts $0 per month. That's our slate plan. And you
Okay.
get access to all the content. Then we have a $50 per year plan, $1 a week, or $100 a year, $10 a month. And you can sign up for either one of those plans. And at each different level, you have different options, right?
Okay.
So if you sign up at our Black Pearl plan, which is our premium plan, or our Noir plan, which is our $50 per year plan, then you can get access to free gifts, autographed posters from the company, T-shirts. You get free advance notice to any shows that we have coming up in person, and just like a way to stay involved with us throughout the year, and also to continue watching content. We've been producing work. It's about 6 shows a year now since 21.
Okay.
So once we get this current slate of shows up, that'll be 24 different plays, musicals, pieces,
And all that's available.
and all that's available
the
online.
stream, right?
Absolutely.
You're watching Curtain Call on WJZZ TV, Cool TV, live. Streaming now on Facebook, YouTube, X, and all other social media platforms. Please like us, hit that little thumbs up,
Yep.
share, comment, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. We need your views. We need your likes, because we feel like theater is an important medium by which to communicate and raise our cultural awareness. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. Now, you mentioned a number of works. What are some of the facilities, some of the houses that you've been producing in, where people can expect to go and see something? You mentioned Live 6.
Yep.
Well, exactly where was that done, and what other venues are you in?
Yeah, so the installation at Live 6 is called Our Stories on Stage.
Okay.
And it's a collection of still and moving pictures that talk about the work that we produced, and that is off of 6 Mile in Livernois.
Okay.
I'm at the Live 6 home base office. And that's right across from, there's like a barbershop right over there. If you know where Detroit Pizza Kitchen is, it's right down the block from that. And then we produce our plays every year at the Bowl at the YMCA downtown.
Okay.
And so I have a great relationship with Seth and Margaret from Y Arts. I'm really grateful to them and for their work. Our musicals we produce across the street at the Opera House, so the Black Box at the Detroit Opera
Black
House.
Box. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the size of that stage? I'm just curious.
For the Opera House,
For the Black Box.
the Black Box, we seat about 80 folks in there.
Okay.
It's flexible, right? It can do whatever you want it to do. What's really cool about our musicals, I love musicals, which I know is a kind of a blurty thing to say, but I don't mind. But they're also big and they're hard to produce, right?
Exactly. I got one for you too.
Absolutely.
I'm going to send you today.
And so what we do is we produce readings and workshops of new shows.
Okay.
And so it's a really cool, I don't know if the audience, anybody out there has been to a stage reading before, but what's really cool about it is the audience gets to like take a peek inside of the process. And so you know this, as a writer, you write a piece for the first time, you haven't necessarily heard it before, you need to hear somebody read it and see what it sounds like, you know, what words they're tripping up on. And a stage reading for a musical is that next step, right?
Okay.
And so we get these writers to come and we have this wonderful, amazing, hilarious piece called Timon that went up this year. And the writers get to have this put up on its feet. The actors are standing at music stands or they're carrying their scripts. They have a shorter process. It's like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to get this thing up. Brandon Waddles is an amazing local musician.
I know Brandon. I work with his father.
Yeah, obviously his father
has written music for me.
Yes, yeah.
And I have him down as a composer for the script I'm about to do.
Yeah, Alvin is fantastic.
Yeah.
He actually just won an award for the city, and that was
Right,
for the city too. But Brandon came in, and he was our music director for this piece this year.
Okay.
And really helped us get it up on its feet, and he's fantastic. And so that musical happens there at the Opera House in their Black Box. And I'll also say something about the Detroit Opera. If y'all haven't been, please go. It's an amazing cultural institution here in the city, and I will say, unlike others, and I won't name them, the Detroit Opera behaves in the way that you would hope a PWI will behave, right? They know what city they're in. They operate as such, and they have been great partners to us in saying, like, here's a young, up and coming company. How can they help us out? And giving us the opportunity to present our work in that space. So everybody over there, Holly, that entire team has been fantastic. And then our opening night cabaret, which this year featured Ariel Crosby and Joel Fluent Green, we did at the Century Theater at the Gem. And so that was another amazing night. It was fantastic. I just started looking at the rough cut from that, and man, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But this has been highly informative. And I'm pretty sure our viewers are gaining something for it. And we'll go out and see your work throughout the theater season, and start and gain an interest and grow an interest in all the other theater venues and outlets and organizations. You mentioned earlier Plowshares,
Detroit Public Theater, Detroit Repertory Theater,
Rep. We've already done Rep. All of the houses, Birmingham Theater,
Matrix, Southwest,
Black and Brown that I heard about.
Black and Brown is really great. Amelia is fantastic.
So we want to raise the level of awareness of theater throughout the city of Detroit and expand that throughout the country, hoping to be able to get people on from New York and from Atlanta, from North Carolina, from Nashville, from Chicago, all over the country as we grow this podcast, this theater podcast, just to raise the awareness of theater arts because it's so necessary for our young people. The arts are what makes society what they are.
100%.
And what makes the community grow and be cultured. So we want to thank you for watching Curtain Call, and we want to thank our guest, Mr. John Sloan III, for being on. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm getting married, y'all.
You're getting married soon. And so thank you again for watching Curtain Call on Wjzz Cool TV Live, the coolest TV station in the world.
Thank you.